Hey, Kate, what did you eat last night?
Well, I did one of my favorite things, which is clear out my fridge of leftovers. And
Fun.
I had half of a chicken breast that I had grilled with this really delicious chili rub that I had made up. That was a couple different kinds of chili powder and some garlic and some other stuff, and some grilled broccoli and some grilled sweet potato. And then I cut it all up and made it into a hash and then mixed some egg into it. You know how you and I are fans of putting an egg in it. This wasn't a fried egg on it. This was an egg in it, like in Thai food.
Nice.
Like you put an egg in pad Thai or something. So
Right.
I held it together with a scrambled egg. And it was super delicious.
Oh, that sounds so yummy.
Yeah, good. How about you?
You know, I had pretty much the same thing in every course. It was really fascinating. I ordered soup with cheese, and I thought, oh, I'm going to get this appetizer, which was basically mushroom and cheese. And then I got a salad, which was basically like salad and cheese. And it's one of those things, I ordered them, but I didn't really think about what I was ordering in totality. They all just individually seemed good.
Right, because they all had cheese in them. Yeah.
And I was like, at the end, I'm like, my gosh, that was a lot of cheese. How did that happen? Like, I didn't even think. And I do that quite frequently. I don't really think about the totality of my meal choices from appetizer, entree. It's nuts. It was really tasty.
So you were just shaking your fist at the restaurant being like, that was cheese. That was a lot of cheese.
Yes, raising my fist going, screwed again.
Sounds delicious. Did you have cheesecake?
I did not. That would have brought it home, wouldn't it?
So welcome to another episode of You Won't Believe What I Ate Last Night. I'm Kate DeVore.
And I'm Rick Fiore.
And this is our ongoing conversation about food, health, weight management, and our endeavor to be and stay healthy in a really tasty world.
With love, kindness, and compassion towards ourselves and others. So today we're doing something a little bit different. We're going off the rails, people. We're talking about politics. And this idea came about because in all of our personal conversations offline, Kate and I have just generally been sort of, what's the word?
Weepy.
Weepy. Just about everything going on in politics and our country and the conversations and the news feeds. And it's really been challenging. So this is also a part of our, as we broaden what our podcast is about, this is really our bigger idea that we like, which is basically everything is consumption, right? Energy, what people say, what people do to you, and it all shows up on our bodies somehow. It shows up on our psyches. So it is this broader issue of what are we consuming?
Everything we take in any format, whether we hear it, whether we see it, whether we feel it, we are still taking it in to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And it's making an impression on us. And still, how do you manage it when that stuff's really, really challenging?
Hey, Rick. So, I've been following this particular political race in a way that I've never followed any political race before, because I've never felt that the world was in jeopardy before and required me to, as I just said to my friend Brad the other day, it's not that I'm following it as much as I'm bearing witness to it. Like, I feel the need to be in the loop in a way that I typically don't. Usually I'm like, I need to know enough to know how I need to vote, and that's all I need to know. And this time is different. So I'm following with a different kind of energy than I usually do. So these last few days, like the last 4 days, I've been at a conference and just been a lot busier than I usually am. So I haven't had a chance to keep up on some of the stuff. Now, some things I've heard about, some things I've heard a little bit, some things I've heard enough about to follow in depth. But I have a feeling, I've missed 4 days worth of stuff, so I know I'm missing some things.
And in these news cycles, 4 days is so much.
I'm saying, yeah. And some of it I wouldn't have followed anyway, but I'm wondering if you can just update me, fill me in. What's been going on this week of August? What week is this?
This is the 12th. We're recording
this. This is the 12th, and it's a Friday. So, the week that started on the week of the what? We should have figured this out.
The 8th, Monday the 8th.
The week of.
We'll
all right,
it.
So the week of Monday the 8th, people. This is what's been happening in your world that you've missed, and this is all down to Rick. With no warning. I did not ask him to prepare this. I sprung it on him. So let's find out what we can learn. All right. What's been going on, Richard?
My favorite is, did you know or hear how Trump said that he's not sure that as a Republican Party that they need to get the vote out?
No, I have not heard that.
Yeah, this is interesting because he is like, wait, when you look at my rallies, there's like 10,000 people there. They're all going to come out to vote. I mean, if you see Hillary's rallies, she's got 200 people. There's no way she's going to win with that. So it's this whole idea that he just thinks because he's turning out these huge rallies that he actually told the RNC, the Republican National Committee, that he doesn't really need their help. He doesn't need their email addresses. He doesn't really need their databases because he just thinks if you're with Trump 100%, you're going to come out to vote.
Now, what do you think might be the subtext of him saying, hey, RNC, I don't need you?
Well, I think it's definitely like...
It's a leading question, right?
It is a leading
question. I have an opinion about the answer. I'm assuming you do too.
Well, I think it is this whole thing that it dials into his image, right? That he doesn't need what has always been done in the past, that he's doing it. It's a whole new way that he's doing it. He doesn't do anything to the traditional way. He's breaking from tradition, right? And his voters like that. So I think he's doing that. He's sort of, thumbing his finger right up at the RNC and says, I don't need your money. Because the RNC wants to turn a lot of their money over to the Senate races and the House races rather than his campaign because he's running it so poorly.
Well, and that sort of leads me to my thought on that, is that he's saying, hey, RNC, I don't need you, because he's seeing the fact that they're perhaps not going to support him, or at least are not supporting him as fully as they have supported other candidates.
Totally,
right?
yeah. And so
my impression of him is that he's a bit of a sore loser. And so if he's, I don't know him, I don't want to be presumptive, but he doesn't appear to be someone who plays fair. And he does appear to be someone who will take his ball and go home if he's not picked first. And so it makes me think that if we're learning that the RNC is going, then he might be going, I don't need you anyway. Is that possible, do you think?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Most definitely. Did you hear about the letter that 70, I think, Republican people like congressmen and senators wrote, basically asking the RNC to dump him, to stop supporting him, to stop giving him money and using their database for him, and to put all of their resources towards the down ballot races? All right, for those of you not here, Kate has just turned her head to the side and is really not even saying anything. She's just so stunned.
But you know what partly that was? I feel so bad for the Republicans, like for moderate, sensible Republicans. This is a shitty time for them as much as it is for us. Like, I don't even know that I'm a Democrat in principle. If you could separate social issues and religious issues from political issues, I might be a Republican. I really don't know. It's gotten so muddled in my lifetime that I can't say, and it's not an issue at this point, because the social and religious, the weird lack of separation of church and state that I don't understand, and all of that has become so much a part of the Republican Party that it's made it so clear that clearly I'm a Democrat. But it doesn't feel like Democrat and Republican are actually about political issues anymore. They're about social and global issues. And so I just feel like the people who are politically Republican are just so screwed right now. And I really feel for moderate, sane Republicans, because I think I could possibly be one if only I knew, And that's just a bummer for them. And so I'm sure the RNC is just like, fuck, because they've just got so many people who are like, really? This is our guy?
This is what we have to put up with? Tough times, I say.
What do they do?
Grin and bear it, man. Grin and bear it. Yeah, what you were saying is true. And this is what they generally say, about America. Is everyone's far more towards the middle than they are towards the extremes. And you and I always have had numerous conversations where I think, yes, absolutely, we lean towards a financial sense of a conservative financial view. But, socially, we both are liberal. And if you could marry those two in a world, that would be pretty awesome. Because I think that's where the majority of the people want to exist, is in the middle. No doubt.
Yeah. And if politics and social stuff, politics and social stuff don't need to be mixed, right? Like, I don't understand when that happened. I don't understand where religion and politics became the same thing.
The 1980s.
that what you're saying?
Yes. Because basically in the 80s is when this whole thing started. I forget what state Ronald Reagan went to announce his candidacy, but it's the state, oh God, it's just where like so many terrible things happen to African Americans. And that's where he chose to launch his campaign.
That state? That one state where that happened?
Kate.
Okay, that state. All right.
And and his administration is really the first one to really turn on this whole idea of religion is linked to a political party. They're really the first ones to take this whole movement with the religious right and bringing them into the fold and basically mobilizing them as a force for politics. And that's where it started, and it's only gotten once, because before that, there wasn't this litmus test, particularly for the Republican Party, that in order to be a Republican, you had to be like a fundamentalist.
I have so many questions about that. So, A, he went to the state that was clearly the most sort of racist white state, is what I'm hearing you to say.
Yeah.
And he chose them because he thought he could gain their power?
Yeah,
Is that
because when he went
mean?
there, it was a symbolic offering that I'm going to go to this state, one of the most conservative states in the country, that has really not been really great for anyone who's not straight and who's not white. And I'm going to, like, this is where I'm launching my campaign, and this is where I'm starting things. So it was sort of like one of those things they call a dog whistle, that only people that are really listening for that are really going to get. And then really you just saw that, because I remember when I was born in 60.
Is that like a code? Is that dog? I've never heard that term. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
is that like a code?
Yeah, so they're basically saying, so when Trump made this last statement about maybe you Second Amendment people can do something. It's like a dog whistle. It's like a code for, rise up, that only you're speaking a language that only a certain amount of people will hear and get.
Really? I thought that was like a fucking train whistle. I think we all heard that, though. No? Is that not? Am I mistaken? Maybe he thought it was a dog whistle, but it was actually a train whistle.
Well,
is that what happened?
This is what's so interesting to me, is that you have so many people saying, we all know what that was, particularly if you're a woman, particularly if you're part of any minority, particularly if you've been a victim or know anyone that's been a victim of injustice or crime, and particularly if you have a vagina or know anyone with a vagina. We all know what he was talking about. But then on the other side, particularly Trump's camp and all his supporters, it's interesting. They're saying, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. And it is this really interesting idea that if you say what you think long enough, it does make other people start to question, oh, maybe I was wrong. So in a weird way, they're just sticking to their message. That's not what he meant. They're basically trying to say, he just meant that you should I'm trying to send a message to the people that they need to rise up and come out to vote. And everyone's like, no, that's not what you meant. Because the way you contextualize the whole statement is that she had already won the presidency and that she had already appointed judges. And after that point, there's nothing you should do, so get your guns out.
I don't think there's a single subgroup that did not understand what he meant by that.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that was funny, did you hear that Donald Trump also said that President Obama is responsible as like the leader of ISIS, the founder of ISIS?
I should not laugh. It is not funny. It is very serious. It's just so absurd. It's so absurd. It's so absurd. It does not mean I do not understand the seriousness of the situation. But yes, I saw a thing. But here's one of those things I saw a headline but did not read is that he claimed that Obama founded ISIS. So what? Tell me.
And that like
about
Hillary
that.
is technically the co-founder. And of course.
As the Secretary of State? Like, how is her role as the co-founder? How did she manage that?
I think she was just born Kate. I think
she's
that's
had
what it is.
very little power, actually. Secretary of State. Well, I guess Senator.
Well, he says 'cause
First Lady's
she
powerful.
voted for the war. That's one. That he always says that under her we had she was the worst Secretary of State we've ever had. We know, which most people will not agree with. Most sane people will not agree with.
And also, she didn't vote for anything as the Secretary of State, right?
Agreed.
Like, you don't vote as the Secretary of State, fucking Donald Trump.
No, totally. And it's just so funny because how many people have to come on and say, no, actually, that's not what happened? Because, it's very clear, and I forget the actual date of when ISIS really got formed and came into its own, right? And so people can tie that all the way back to obviously our invasion of Iraq and even a little bit before that. But the thing that's so funny is in all the defense, Mike Pence, Trump's VP, this is my favorite line he's been saying about that. Mike Pence says, he says it's the media's fault for taking Trump's ISIS comments seriously.
Rick.
Yeah.
Are you serious? Did he actually say that?
Yeah. It was in a speech. He blamed.
It's the media's fault.
It was on Thursday. He blamed the media for making an issue out of Donald Trump's claim that President Barack Obama founded ISIS. He says they were nitpicking at Trump's words while missing the larger truth of his remarks.
Which is that, believe me, I will make America great again by restoring law and order, as he says it.
Is that how he says it?
Law and order, right? Because he has that intrusive R. I'm a speech coach. He's from New York. He says law and order. He puts that intrusive R in there, that is not a reason I don't like him. I enjoy the intrusive R.
You heard it here, folks. You heard it here first.
We are not criticizing the intrusive R or the dialect, but rather the content. So wait. So the point is that the media shouldn't be reporting what he says. Like, that's the problem.
Yeah, or should it be
it's
taking
the media's fault for actually saying, quoting him?
Yeah, that you really shouldn't take him literally at his word is what he says as a presidential nominee. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. That's certainly true.
Because that liberal media, Kate.
Right.
Here's the other fun thing. So, little Mitch McConnell. I hate Mitch McConnell. He's the Senate. Oh my God, I can't speak. Senate Majority Leader. And you know how he's basically been blockading Obama's choice of Merrick for the Supreme Court. And he says it's not going to happen.
I trust you, though. I don't know that.
Yeah, so
but okay.
Oh my God, I can't even remember the Supreme Court justice that died. Scalia? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he died, right? So Obama nominated Merrick, and Merrick is this guy that, years ago, both sides agreed on, you're awesome. So he nominates him because he thinks he has a strong chance of getting through because the Republicans like him so much. And the Republicans have always
he's a reasonable moderate, is my understanding.
And the Republicans have been on record for years saying, we'd love to have Merrick on the Supreme Court. So, of course, they block his nomination. They won't even bring it up for a vote because they don't think Obama should appoint anyone. So they've been blockading him. We only have 8 Supreme Court justices. And what's so interesting now, which I've been reading on the papers here in D.C., Roll Call and Politico, is that Mitch McConnell, he's really caught in this weird place because the polls have tanked so poorly for Donald Trump that most people are pretty clear that, Hillary's going to win, if you trust polls where they are. So they're pressuring him to put Merrick Garland up for a vote because they think it would be better to ensure somewhat of a person in the middle than even a more liberal person that Hillary Clinton might nominate. And he's still, so they're saying he's stuck in this position of really wanting to at least get someone that they somewhat approve in there versus, Hillary just bringing in a total left-winger. Isn't that fascinating?
It is fascinating, and it comes again to my real compassion for the reasonable Republicans in this situation.
Oh, totally, Kate.
I don't imagine most of the Republicans are feeling a similar compassion toward the Democrats, and yet I still feel like, oh my God, those poor bastards. This is just a tough time to be a non-Trump supporting Republican.
Yeah.
That's just rough. And so I'm sure they're like, please get that guy in there.
And that your party was taken over by a complete and total outsider. Mm-hmm. That's what's shocking. And they're all probably like, really? Oh my God, this is what we got? He's not even one of us.
Yeah, and he's really besmirching the name that was already iffy of that party.
Exactly.
Now, can we talk a little bit more about this whole blocking thing? I don't think we've ever talked about this on the podcast, but this is a conversation you and I have had because you have so often been helpful to me in understanding political things about the agreement that the Republicans made when Obama came into office.
Yeah.
Can you say that again?
It's sort of unprecedented. What happened is the night before he met, all the top GOP people met. Basically, when all the parties are going on for his presidency, they met and they were coming up with ways of how to stop him from getting anything done. And they literally, as a consensus, came together and said, we're not going to let him get anything done. We're going to stop everything he does and block everything he does. It's unprecedented. And we have it on record, right? Because you always know that stuff goes on. So that's really sort of unprecedented that it's ever happened, and it continues to happen. Because people will say that Obama never really reached out to people, but it's sort of not true. Because, they keep track of everything in the White House, the phone calls that he makes, who he reaches out to. Mm-hmm. And there's a huge history of him reaching out to people early on. But they never met him anywhere. Even if you go back to Obamacare and when it got passed, they spent a good months debating with the Democrats about what the Affordable Care Act should look like, what should be in it. And basically, the Affordable Care Act was this really great policy created by Republicans. It was rolled out under Mitt Romney's governorship. Where was he governor of? Massachusetts. And they rolled it out. And it was a huge success. And that's basically what Obama was putting forward, was a Republican plan for health care that came from the Heritage Foundation, a big think tank for Republicans. They rolled it out and they're debating it, right? And so basically the Republicans, they debated out and they got everything decent taken out of the Affordable Care Act, particularly the single payer thing, which would have been really revolutionary for everyone's health care. So they basically got all the cool, good, decent stuff taken out of it, and then none of them voted for it. Every single Republican voted against it. And that's like a prime example of not only did they destroy their own policy that came out of their own top-end think tank, and they just destroyed it, and they wouldn't let it get passed because of their pettiness about blocking everything this man was going to do.
So there's two things that come to mind here. One is, again, my theme, my surprised and shocked theme of this topic is poor Republicans. Once again.
That's what we're going to call this show, poor Republicans.
I really feel bad for the normal, sane Republicans. Because I know I have a lot of friends who are those people, like sane people. Like, I don't think I know anyone that's voting for Trump. Like, I don't know that faction of the party, but like the real people, the normal people who are not crazy, who are just Republicans, like, and how much it sucks for them. Like, that just sucks. And then also, I don't understand how it's okay for people to just play Red Rover instead of doing their job. It feels like they've just created a chain link. Do you remember Red Rover?
Yeah.
It's like where you linked arms on the playground, because this all feels like a playground game, because these all feel like fifth grade boys doing this whole thing. Ugh. So they link arms and they make a big, like, guy chain, and they won't let anyone through. Like, it's like it's Red Rover as opposed to actually doing their job. And somebody somewhere is being bullied into believing that that's acceptable.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we're seeing an entire portion of our branches of government not do their job.
Look at the congressional sit-in.
Yeah. Another great example.
Look, I can't believe I just was able to say the sentence, look at the congressional sit-in. If you guys knew me my entire life, like, that's never a sentence in my entire life I would ever have said and known what it meant. And yet, I just did and did.
That's crazy.
But the reasonable members of Congress had to try to sit in to try to get people to do their freaking jobs, and then it still didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really sort of unbelievable. I don't know.
Do you know?
Go ahead.
Do you know who Tammy Duckworth is?
I do.
She's going to be our senator. Yeah. She's going to be our senator in Illinois here, and she is an amazing veteran and advocate and politician, and we just love her. And she has these prosthetic legs because she lost her legs in the war and got a Purple Heart, and has some cool stuff on her Facebook page about what getting a Purple Heart really means, Mr. Trump. And she actually smuggled a cell phone into those sit-ins in her prosthetic legs so she could document them, which I just think is so badass. She's so cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was the other thing? So the other thing that's sort of interesting, I think, is that Hillary's been really quiet for the last week.
Yeah.
Even her rallies that she's been having, they've been very toned down. They've been very low key.
Good idea.
And what'd you say?
I say good idea, man. Give them the rope to hang themselves and shut the hell up.
That's exactly what it appears the strategy is, that basically she's just letting him do what he does. Mm-hmm. And her whole campaign at this point is like, let's just let him have the spotlight. Let him have it. Let him say what he wants, because, he's controlling all the headlines. And I think the Clinton campaign right now is very, very happy to let him do that.
Yeah. Well, I thought the entire DNC entire platform and subtext was, I'm not Trump. And so I think she's just continuing to play that card of, hello, anybody sane, needing a leader who knows some things about leading in government. I'm not crazy. Like, I kind of think that's their platform, and so it makes sense to just sit quietly back and let him implode.
I'm not that guy, everyone. Isn't that good?
But it's also remarkable to me that there had to have been, I can't say what they were, but at least 6 or 7 times over the last 6 months that something has gone around and the whole media has been like, Trump has finally crossed a line. Like, it's like every week Trump has finally crossed another line of racism and misogyny and treason and all these things that he's actually doing. And it doesn't matter. So the whole point is, this is not a race about logic. This is a race about emotion. And so how do we change the discourse? Not you and I, but like the nation.
I suddenly felt
Although if you and I could
yeah.
do it. No, not us. But like people following us, you know who you are. But like, how do we change the discourse in the nation, we as a people, so that it addresses this emotional subtext that's underlying this whole emotion? Because that also speaks to the whole Sanders thing. Like, this has been an entirely emotional campaign race. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that perhaps Ms. Clinton is not as popular, is she's not, ironically, as the female,
right,
is not the emotional candidate. Sanders and Trump are the emotional candidates. The woman is the masculine of, if we were looking at it energetically, masculine and feminine, right? Like, she's the masculine
definitely.
one. And so, like, but so how do we change the discourse so it's not about emotions entirely? Our emotions have to factor into our choices, but you know, like, people talk about voting from the heart, and voting from the heart doesn't mean voting in a way that makes you feel better and allows you to release your emotions and be heard and have a will. It means making a choice that's loving and compassionate. And so I don't know how to marry this emotional, mental sort of schism that's happening here in our world.
Well, it starts by talking about it, because what you had just said reminded me what you've said to me so many times offline, which is how you feel about all the Bernie supporters, right? That they're going to make a choice just to appease some quality or feeling they have in their hearts, regardless of how applicable it is or how sensible it is, just to make a point. I forget what the term is, but you used it as like, they just seemed like, you know, little, what's the word? Like, they like sore losers or something like that. I can't remember.
Tantrum.
Yeah.
Tantrum.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think
because I had a conversation with somebody who said that his whole point of voting for Bernie, or no, voting for Jill Stein, I think it was no, it wasn't even Jill Stein. It was can't remember the dude's name. The guy who's the other guy, not Jill Stein, but the other guy, the libertarian guy. I can't remember his John. I can't. Anyway, that guy, and it was about his whole thing was I get to express my will. That was his whole rationale, is I get to express my will.
Wow.
So it does feel like that whole third-party voter wants to express their will, and God knows I understand that. I so get it. I so get wanting to have a tantrum and express my will and be heard and burn the fucker down and all that stuff. I really, really get it.
Right.
And yet I feel that I have a responsibility to my fellow citizens to act in a way that will not cause all the disenfranchised and people with more melanin in their skin to be just completely screwed over.
Totally. And this is really this whole idea of what I think we tap into a little bit, which is what's the greater good, right? It's always really hard to focus on the greater good, but when you're feeling particularly emotional and you're feeling like it's all about you. So part of that shift, I think, is to remember that this whole idea that you and I talk a lot about, that we're all ultimately in it together. You know, Gary Johnson, is that the libertarian?
Thank you. Yes, it is.
Thank
Gary
God.
Johnson. Thank you.
So I think that's part of it. The other thing that comes to mind is, here's a question for you and anybody listening. Do you ever call your representatives in Congress? Do you ever do that?
Well, I actually looked into this and did make a few calls and emails and stuff recently. But as it turns out, I live in Illinois, and currently my representatives are pretty cool. So my senators and congressmen, from what I could see, have actually been in accord with my wishes. So I have limited clout in that because they're already doing what I say. But yes,
Totally.
I did. And again, this is the first time I've ever even taken
Wow.
the step or gone to the trouble to be like, how do they vote on gun issues? How do they vote on women's issues? How,
Right.
So I do.
So if you can go online, and I think it's called you can just Google Find Your Representative, and it'll come up, and you can contact them. So that's really important. Here's the other thing to remember. You can call other senators and voice your opinion in their office. You don't have to just call yours. So I think that's really important, because I have the
Really?
number to the line in my phone. And whenever I'm bored or sitting in traffic, it's really easy to call. So I think that's something important.
Wait a minute. Talk more about that. What now? You can call other senators from other states? Why would they care what you say?
Well, I don't
from
know how
another
much
state.
they'll
You're not
care,
gonna
but
vote
I
for
think
them.
it's important about people. They're always interested in how everything's playing out there. So a lot of people don't call. A lot more people do email stuff. But you can email and contact any senator that you want. You just don't. You're not just allowed to call. The one that works for you. You can really just contact anyone and just give them your opinion and let them know. And I think those things are important for, how they say it's about taking the pulse of how something's playing out there. So I think that's important, because you never know, particularly in a race like this where there's such a dissonance between the presidential nominee and then all the down ballot people. I think you never know what's going to affect them. You never know how something's going to play out. And I think it's a great thing to do, because we're all stuck in traffic for a large part of our lives. It's a great number to have in your phone and just to dial out and try.
Wait a minute. So I'm still confused as to why a senator from a state where you can't vote for them would care what you think. Because my feeling is it's all business. It's all politics. They don't care what you actually think. They just want to get reelected, right? So, why do they care? Do you just not say? Maybe they don't know. Maybe you're just like, hey, can you just say, I'm a constituent and I think, do you pretend you live there?
Well, that's what I always say to the people when I call my representatives. So I've never been asked specifically. I've only called one other senator who's not mine. But I'm just talking about they're gonna get feedback, and you're right. I mean, to what degree do they care? I don't know. I'm not sure. But to me, it makes me feel good.
It's interesting.
You know what I mean? It does make me feel like I'm doing something. And that's really what it comes down to. Because you and I have talked about this with all this going on. I mean, what can you do? And sometimes, some of us can obviously give money to campaigns. That's really important. Some of us can actually go out and work a phone bank, or we can go out and drive voters to the polls. And sometimes you can just call and try to just lodge your feelings and lodge your idea.
It's true. They don't necessarily ask you for your address when you call. You could just call. Yeah. That's a really good point. That had not occurred to me, to just sort of maybe imply that I might live there. They might not know.
And here's what I've learned. Most people in these offices, they're not working that myopically. Yeah, they have to get reelected in their state, but anyone that's worth their salt, they're in this game to win it and play big. So they're always thinking about moving up the ladder, whatever that means for them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important about how issues play out. So, yeah. The other thing I thought was interesting is, I was just finding it here. I can't find my notes. Oh, the other thing that's so interesting is all of the traditional sort of southern states that are now in play because of all the things that Donald Trump is doing. It's really sort of amazing that the polls have gotten so close that the Clinton campaign's actually thinking, what are these southern states that haven't voted blue in decades and decades? Which ones could we actually turn? I mean, that's a fascinating dynamic that's existing right now. That there's saying states in the South that have been red for years could actually go blue, and that would be unprecedented.
How do we do that? This way that we were just saying?
Say that again?
Do we have any more information about how to do that other than what we were just saying?
No. I just think it's a more interesting thing that's been happening. Yeah, because
her
poll, she's sort of broken out in so many polls over the last couple of weeks that it's literally changing the makeup of the whole country as far as what states have been put in play.
That's fascinating.
Isn't
it? So the last point I want to make about this is about how many of us are sort of dejected Hillary voters. I think there's a lot of us that are like, I'm not a huge Hillary fan, but she's, the only option. I think it might be helpful if we got a little more psyched. Right? She's also not that bad. I also really, really feel that, the progress of somebody like a Bernie Sanders isn't going to happen overnight. And just because a whole bunch of white dudes just got woke and just finally learned that they're not happy with the way politics works, and they now, because they're so freaking entitled, expect it to happen in a year, doesn't mean that it isn't going to happen in future. And I think that we need somebody like Hillary Clinton to pave the groundwork for that. I think she's the one that needs to go in and make some moderate changes that is going to lay the groundwork for a truly progressive candidate to come in and make some real change. She's like the fish in the ocean that just goes through and clears out the crap because they just live in the bottom of the ocean. Because Hillary Clinton, God love her, is a worker, and she wants to work for that. And so I think her role is to clear a space so that somebody who is truly more progressive can come in on top of that.
Preach it, Kate. Preach it. Beautifully said. Well, because you really speak to what anyone who's been part of a subgroup in this country or any other country knows. The changes, it takes so long. And one thing will happen to make it seem like everything happened overnight. But, there's so many things that have gone into play well before that to make one big thing possible that makes it seem like, oh, that was easy.
It's like when we do our personal growth work, or when I coach a student and I coach them for a year on something, and then they come in and they're like, I had this magic breakthrough. Not imaginary, this magic breakthrough that happened, and this is the cure. Or even you work for a year on something, and then one thing happens and you want to attribute it to that. But nothing is immediate. We might have an insight, but it doesn't mean that change is necessarily immediate.
Exactly. And it's the building blocks that create change. And I think anyone that's worth their salt as a leader or a spiritual leader is going to tell you that. Even when you listen to people from MLK's family, they always say that it didn't happen overnight, and you look what he did and the work that was done before him. I mean, anyone that's worth their salt is going to give it up to everyone that's come before, right? Because it's those shoulders upon which you stand. So that's the whole, what's so wonderful about what you said. Yeah, people need to chill out. And here's the other thing.
And get on board. Be excited. I'm saying that for myself as much as for anyone else, because I'm one of those people that's like, all right. But I really need to recognize her value, and her value is rich. It's deep. It's important. It's serious. It's not just that she's not Donald Trump. And if it were that would be enough for me. I'm not to be mistaken.
Right.
I will settle for anybody at this point who is not Donald Trump, as I think most of us will. But I'd like to go beyond that. Hillary Clinton is more than just not Donald Trump.
Yeah.
She's more than just not him.
She is by far, this is my personal opinion, the single most qualified candidate we've had. And I'm going to say in about 30 years. If you just look at resume, as far as positions, things that, you would think someone who's going to be president would have done or should have done, she's going to have them by far. I
will trust you on that, man.
I was just listening to this really sort of great report, how all these, when you look at these blogs that all the reporters, they talk about reporting stuff, they're all so excited about this debate because they've said this is going to be the first debate that they've had, that they think they've ever had in the history of televised debates, where they're going to have the single most prepared person for a debate in Hillary Clinton, just because of her knowledge base, because of how hard she works, how much of a policy wonk she is, that there's no one that's ever going to be as prepared as she has been.
My heart just broke because of the fact that doesn't matter for so much of the voting public, and that just makes me want to crawl in a hole.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, but yeah, that's, I mean, right. And he has zero experience, and yet that doesn't matter.
And the big thing I want to say about being excited about Hillary, which I agree with you is super important, we have to remember, we're all in relationships. Most people, if they're in their 40s and 50s, there are certain relationships you've been in, whether friends or partners or married, for 20, 30 years. It's called relationship fatigue. You know what I mean? It happens. She's been around so long. We know a lot about her. We know her tricks. We know how she's going to sound. Yes, excitement isn't necessarily the thing that's going to come the easiest with her. But what is that quality of someone who someone who you've seen through the years, and as we all know, isn't perfect. I just don't understand, when I listen to all these Republicans and this whole thing about how she lies. She just lies. She's a liar. And I'm like, when did telling the truth become the litmus test for Republicans? That's what I want to know. You know what I mean, when did that become the thing that they have to have in their candidate?
I mean, that's just such a whole nother thing. The amount of lies she is told versus the number of lies he is told and whatever. And also when you said we know the way she sounds, the fact that there's so much criticism of her voice and yet there's so little criticism of his voice as a voice person is deeply upsetting. As a voice person and as a woman, well, and a human, because you're upset by it too, and you're neither of those. So, like, that's,
I
that's
do feel like
just
I'm
a
more
bummer.
woman than human, so there you go.
You didn't mean that like it sounded.
How did it sound?
More woman than human, like they're not the same thing.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't mean that.
I know, exactly. I mean, you put woman above human is the point. Rick is an honorary woman. That's really what he meant.
Yes, please don't write in and tell me that I don't value women. Please don't. I do.
No, he's more in touch with women's devaluation than I am. So yeah, no question there. I don't think anyone who listens to us regularly would be concerned about that.
Whoosh,
All
that
right,
was a close one.
so we're gonna sign out, and we're gonna just ask you to, the drill. Respond to us on Facebook, like us. Please get your friends to like us. We are trying to get out there, you guys. If you guys have any ideas for how we can get to a broader audience, or any ideas for how we can even change our topic or format a little bit so that we can reach a broader audience with the messages that that Rick and I have to share, we would be really grateful.
Thank you.
I want to